My stepdaughter said, "You can't expect US to care about you. You're just mom's husband." So I removed my name from everything she relied on. The house, the health insurance, the emergency fund, and when she asked for help. I wasn't anyone's husband that day. My name's Brian. I'm 48. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. The summers are hot, the neighbors are quiet, and the house I own sits at the end of a cul-de-sac that nobody drives through unless they live here. It's the kind of street that still gets Halloween traffic, where kids leave their bikes out overnight and nobody touches them. I bought this house 12 years ago, after my first divorce. A fresh start, I told myself. 3 bedrooms, modest backyard, just enough to feel stable without feeling trapped. I didn't know then that the next trap would come dressed as a second chance. I met Jenna through a support group, divorce recovery, Thursday nights at a church basement that smelled like old paper and burnt coffee. She wore her grief differently, more like armor than weight, talked about rebuilding, talked about letting go. I remember thinking, here's someone who gets it. She laughed at my dry sarcasm, said I looked like the kind of man who'd fix things with his hands, not his mouth. She wasn't wrong. 6 months later, she moved in. Another 6, we were married. It wasn't impulsive, it was deliberate. We talked about commitment like it was a contract. We were both old enough to know better, young enough to still believe people meant what they said. Jenna had a daughter, Harper, 17 when we got married. Tall, guarded, a soft face with sharp eyes, the kind of girl who didn't say much, but made you feel like every word you spoke was being weighed on a scale you didn't understand. She didn't like me. Not openly, but not in the way that matters either. Just quiet resistance. She kept her last name. I didn't push. When she moved into the house, my house, I told myself it was a new beginning. I cleared out a room for her, painted it her favorite color, bought the bedding she picked out online. She never thanked me, but I didn't need that then. I was building something. Families take time. I added her to my health insurance the same week she chipped her tooth at volleyball practice. Cost me an extra $180 a month. When her car broke down the winter after she moved in, I took off work, drove out to a gas station off I-85 and paid a tow truck in cash because her phone battery died. I put her through her first semester at UNCC, tuition, books, meal plan. She said the dorms felt like prison, so we upgraded her to an off-campus apartment. I co-signed the lease. My name on the line. My credit, my liability. No drama. No conditions. I did it because that's what family does. That's what I believed. You'd be surprised how long you can live on belief. Harper never said thank you. Never said much. She'd come home from school breaks, leave her laundry in piles, drain the hot water, and disappear again. Jenna said it was normal. Teenagers are like that. I nodded. I told myself love was silent sometimes. I told myself patience was part of the job. When her FAFSA got delayed twice, I paid the difference before she even asked. When she needed a new laptop, I bought one. MacBook Pro, full specs. For design classes, she said. I saw Instagram open more than Photoshop, but I kept my mouth shut. You don't build a family by nitpicking. You build it by showing up. I showed up. Constantly. And she didn't. Not once. She didn't introduce me to her friends when they came over. She never acknowledged the effort. She never said, "Stepdad." That word was a ghost in our house. Jenna called me her husband. Harper called me nothing. Still, I kept giving. Quietly. Steadily. I built a bigger emergency fund, one she didn't know about. I set aside money for her second year of college. I started looking into used cars so she wouldn't have to borrow mine whenever hers coughed up another repair bill. I did all of this without being asked because I believed stupidly that you don't need blood to be family. Just commitment. Just consistency. Then came the night. Dinner was nothing special. Baked chicken. Overcooked asparagus. Jenna tried a new recipe and Harper barely touched her plate. Her phone was out, screen glowing like it always did. I asked her, politely, to put it away. She didn't. Jenna asked too, softer. That was always her tone with Harper. Gentle. Careful, like the girl was made of glass instead of steel. Harper rolled her eyes. A long, theatrical roll. Then she looked me straight in the face for the first time in weeks. "You can't expect us to care about you," she said. "You're just Mom's husband." It wasn't a shout. It wasn't a scream. It was worse than that. It was casual, cold, delivered like a fact, like she was reminding me of something I had forgotten. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just stared at her, waiting for Jenna to say something, to correct her, to step in even half-heartedly. But Jenna didn't speak. She looked down at her plate like the food had suddenly become fascinating. And in that silence, I heard everything I needed to hear. I sat there, fork in hand, thinking about every line I'd signed, every hour I'd worked overtime, every sacrifice I'd made in quiet. I thought about the car insurance payment that had cleared just that morning, the groceries I'd bought, the roof I'd patched, the drain I unclogged last weekend while Harper slept until noon. I thought about the tuition statement sitting in my inbox, already scheduled for payment. And then I thought about what she said. Just Mom's husband. Not a father. Not a stepfather. Not a guardian. Not even a person. Just an accessory. A line item on a household budget. A name that could be erased without consequence. I finished chewing. I set my fork down. And I felt it, not a snap. Not a break. A shutoff. Something inside me shut down that night. Quietly. Cleanly. A light switch. A locked door. A final click. When Harper said those words, "You're just Mom's husband," something didn't break in me. Breaking implies sound, force, aftermath. This was quieter. A dimming. A pilot light going out in a cold kitchen. 1 second it burned. The next it didn't. No smoke. No sparks. Just absence. I sat through the rest of dinner like a man watching the end credits of a movie he never wanted to see. Jenna kept glancing at me, waiting for me to soften, to shrug, to laugh it off the way I used to handle the small indignities. Slammed doors, unspoken apologies, the constant hum of being tolerated instead of welcomed. But I didn't soften. I didn't speak. I excused myself early, washed my plate alone, and went upstairs without switching on the hall lights. In the bedroom, the air felt different. Too still. Too clean. Like the room belonged to a stranger wearing my skin. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at my hands. The same hands that had built this house back into shape after storms. The same hands that had held Harper's shaking shoulders when she didn't get into her first choice school. The same hands that had supported 3 people while 2 of them pretended not to see the scaffolding beneath them. What a fool I was. I picked up my phone. Not out of anger. Out of clarity. The first call I made was to HR. I didn't explain why I wanted Harper removed from my insurance. I didn't need to. Policies don't require emotional justification. Just signatures. I gave them both. The second call was to the bank. I had added Jenna as a user to my emergency fund years ago. A gesture of trust. A symbol that we were building a life together. That account had covered everything from car repairs to surprise medical bills. All without complaint. I told the bank to remove her access. "Would you like to close the joint portion entirely, sir?" "No," I said. "Just make it mine again." My voice surprised me. Steady, controlled, as though I had rehearsed this moment for years in the back of my mind. Maybe I had. Next came the house documents. I logged into the portal I rarely touched except for annual tax reminders. Everything was already in my name: deed, mortgage, insurance. But I'd attached Jenna as a secondary contact after the wedding, out of courtesy, out of optimism. Now I removed her. 1 click. 1 confirmation. The system didn't ask why. People don't ask why a man reclaims what was always his. Somewhere downstairs, laughter spilled from the living room. Jenna's voice drifting through the vents. Harper's too. Light, careless, as though nothing had happened. As though the man upstairs wasn't silently extracting himself from the life they took for granted. I didn't feel anger. Not even sadness. Just a cold, weightless clarity. The kind of clarity a man only reaches when he finally understands the depth of his own invisibility. The next morning I woke before dawn. Showered. Shaved. Packed my work bag. My routine stayed the same, but I felt like a shadow wearing my own clothes. Harper was in the kitchen, scrolling through her phone, cereal bowl abandoned in front of her. She didn't look up when I entered, didn't acknowledge me, didn't even sense the shift. Good. Jenna kissed my cheek out of habit, not affection. There's a difference you learn to recognize when you've lived enough years in a home where gratitude is assumed but never spoken. "You're quiet this morning," she said. "I'm fine." She believed me because she wanted to, because comfort is easier than confrontation. That weekend, the storm arrived. Harper got into a minor car accident. Nothing serious, just a fender and a bruised ego. But the ER insisted on scans to rule out concussion. And Harper, always eager to perform adulthood without accepting the cost of it, signed whatever forms they handed her. 2 days later, the bill came. Jenna opened it at the dining table, eyes widening as the numbers unfolded across the page. Why isn't this covered?" she murmured, flipping through the paperwork as though an answer might appear if she shuffled the pages fast enough. Harper looked up, annoyed. "What do you mean not covered? I'm on Brian's insurance. No one called me Dad, not even Stepdad. But my name was always there when it came to the benefits. Not anymore." Jenna looked at me then, her voice small, tinged with fear. "Brian, did something happen with the insurance?" I sat down across from her, folded my hands, and gave her the same clarity she had allowed to die at that dinner table. "Yes," I said. "I removed her." Harper blinked, confused. "What? Why?" Jenna reached for the emergency fund folder, the soft blue binder we kept in the drawer near the fridge, organized with receipts, statements, contingencies. The binder I had once felt proud of. She flipped to the back pocket. Empty. Her face drained of color. "Brian, the emergency fund. Where is it?" I shrugged, the simplest answer I had left. "It's mine." "Yours?" she repeated, as though the concept had never occurred to her. "What do you mean yours?" I held her gaze, unflinching. "I mean exactly that. I took my name back from everything." Harper stared at me, fear flickering behind her eyes for the first time since she'd moved into my house. Without insurance, her ER bill ballooned. Without the emergency fund, the deductible twisted into a small financial crisis. Without the safety net I had quietly maintained, their lives suddenly had edges again. Sharp ones. Jenna swallowed hard, voice trembling. "We can't afford this bill. There's the deductible, the imaging fees, Brian, this is thousands of dollars." "That's unfortunate," I said. She looked at me like I had struck her. "Brian," she whispered, "please, this isn't like you." But that was the point. The man who fixed everything, paid for everything, absorbed everything, was never who I actually was. It was who I became to survive in a home where appreciation was extinct. Harper scoffed then, bitterness rising before understanding. "So that's it? You're punishing me? Because of one comment? Grow up." I met her stare with the coldest truth I had. It wasn't a comment. It was a definition. And all I've done is agree with you. Silence. Heavy. Final. Jenna's voice cracked. "Brian, we have the fund. We'll just—" "There is no fund," I said. "Not for you. Not for her. The money is in a private account now." Her expression shifted, confusion to shock to something that looked a lot like betrayal, but without the self-awareness to grasp who betrayed whom first. Harper slammed her chair back. "You're unbelievable." But I wasn't. I was inevitable. Everything they had taken for granted, my name, my labor, my sacrifice, evaporated the moment they told me what I was. Just Mom's husband. Nothing more. Very well. That night, they whispered in the kitchen long after they thought I'd gone to bed. Words like unfair and cruel and how could he swirled beneath the hum of the refrigerator. They spoke as though I wasn't upstairs calculating exit routes from a life built on my shoulders but never built with my presence in mind. The next morning I left early. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't need to. The man they refused to see was already gone. When you remove yourself from a machine, you learn quickly which gears depended on you, which pieces only moved because you moved them, which people only functioned because you were the invisible structure beneath their lives. For years I was that structure, silent, unthanked. necessary. But the moment I stepped back, the whole house learned what happens when the load-bearing wall walks away. It started small, the way collapses always begin, with disbelief as though reality should bend to their assumptions. Jenna paced the kitchen, Bill spread open like a wound. Harper hovered behind her, arms crossed, bravado deflating with every new charge she read. "Brian," Jenna said that morning, her voice thin from a night of crying. She thought I hadn't heard. "We need to talk about fixing this." "There's nothing to fix," I answered. She looked at me like I had forgotten how to be human. "Harper's medical bill is over $8,000. She's a student. I'm a teacher. We can't just absorb that." "Then don't," I said. "Set up a payment plan." Harper let out a sharp breath. "This is insane. I've never had to do that before." "That's because someone else was doing it for you." She glared at me, but beneath the glare was panic, the first crack in her certainty that the world would always rearrange itself to spare her discomfort. And that was just the warm-up. 3 days after the bill arrived, Harper came home from campus with a brown envelope clutched in her hand. She dropped it onto the coffee table in front of me like a summons. "It's a loan estimate," she said, "for the medical charges. They said since I'm not insured, I need to take this out." I looked at the paper, then at her. "Then take it out." Her face crumpled into disbelief. "You're actually serious?" "Completely." She stared at me for a long time, waiting for me to blink first. But I'd been blinking for years. Now it was her turn to adjust to the light. When she left the room, Jenna stepped in, holding her elbows the way she did whenever she was about to confess something she should have said years earlier. "She doesn't understand how money works," Jenna whispered. "She grew up assuming things would be handled." "That's the problem," I said. "You let her think struggle was optional." Jenna shook her head, tears gathering. "Brian, you know she didn't mean what she said that night." "She meant every word," I said. "Maybe not with maturity, but with truth." The silence that followed was heavy, not because she disagreed, but because she knew I was right. By the next week, reality landed harder. Harper's insurance lapse triggered a penalty through her university account, an administrative fee, then another fee for missed coverage verification. Small things, small enough that rich students ignore them, but significant enough to make Harper's eyes widen when she saw the totals. She confronted me again, voice brittle. "They said the fees double if the coverage isn't resolved in 10 days. "Then resolve it," I said. "How? By myself?" "Yes." Her jaw dropped. "This is unbelievable." "No," I said quietly. "This is adulthood. You demanded separation. I honored it." She stormed off, muttering curses under her breath. But none of them mattered. They were the last words of a person realizing the ground she stood on wasn't natural earth. It was flooring I had laid. The next collapse belonged to Jenna. She received her credit card statement on a Thursday afternoon. I found her sitting at the kitchen table afterward, the bill in one hand, her head in the other. "Brian," she whispered, "I can't do this alone." "You're not alone," I said. "You have a daughter." She flinched at that. "You know what I mean." "I do," I said. "You mean you can't do this without the man you said didn't matter." Her eyes filled instantly. "I never said that." "No," I said. "You just didn't correct it." She looked at the fridge, the family photos, the magnets, the grocery lists, as if something on it might give her an answer. But none of those things were built by her. Not the fridge, not the kitchen, not the structure holding the walls in place, not the account that bought the food inside it. She was surrounded by proof of my presence, yet she had never taught her daughter to acknowledge it. "Brian," she said, voice trembling, "I don't want to lose you. You lost me the moment you let her tell me what I was." Jenna crumpled, a quiet collapse, smaller than the others but deeper, because she knew something Harper didn't. "I'm a man who does not return once he leaves. I don't slam doors. I don't shout. I disappear." By Saturday, Harper's world had narrowed to bills and deadlines, two things she'd never had to confront without a safety net. I found her sitting at the dining table, papers spread before her, calculator app open on her phone. She didn't look up when I entered. Only when I poured coffee did she speak, voice low, stripped of her earlier arrogance. I didn't know you paid for everything. I didn't answer. She swallowed hard. I thought it just happened. I thought Mom took care of some of it. Or that insurance covered more. Or that the school. She stopped, exhaled shakily. I never realized how much was you. Most people don't realize what supports them until it's gone. She flinched. I wasn't trying to hurt you that night. But you did. I know. She lifted her eyes then. Gray-green, like storm clouds ready to break. Something in her expression had changed. Not affection, not apology, but recognition. Recognition of the man she had erased. Recognition of the debt she had pretended not to owe. Recognition of the truth she had never wanted to face. But recognition isn't redemption. It's only the first uncomfortable step. Later that evening, Harper approached me again, this time with hesitation instead of defiance. Can you show me how to set up the payment plan? She asked quietly. No, I said. She blinked, stunned. Why not? Because you're the one who said I'm not part of your family. You wanted distance. This is what distance feels like. The words hit her harder than any punishment, harder than any bill, because they were true, not retaliatory, not emotional, just fact. She folded her arms around herself, suddenly small. It's harder than I thought. Life usually is, I said. She bit her lip, said nothing, then retreated to her room. Not slamming the door this time, just easing it shut like a person unsure if she belonged here at all. Good. Let understanding start where entitlement ends. The following Monday, the final blow landed. Jenna asked if we could transfer money from the emergency fund for car repairs. A chipped rotor, a new set of tires. She even smiled when she asked, a tired smile, a hopeful one, as if pretending everything was normal could make it so. What fund? I said. She froze. You can measure a marriage by the silence that follows a truth. Her lips parted, shaking. Brian, please don't do this. I'm not doing anything, I said. I simply stopped doing what was never acknowledged. Jenna's face sank into her hands. Harper stood behind her, watching me with a kind of stunned, bruised awareness. The look of someone who finally sees the monster they created, except the monster was never monstrous, just awake. They wanted the old version of me back. The silent provider, the dependable ghost, the man who covered every flaw, every bill, every mistake without demanding respect in return. But that man was gone. He left the night Harper told him what he was. And now they stood here, mother and daughter, staring at the outline of the man they had taken for granted, learning, slowly and painfully, that the cost of ignoring someone is eventually living without them. The next morning, neither of them spoke to me. Not out of anger, out of understanding. Not full understanding, that would come later, but the beginnings of it. The early stage of a realization they never believed they'd have to face. It was easier when someone else paid for everything. And that someone had been me. Now the bills were theirs. Now the consequences were theirs. Now the silence was theirs. And for the first time in this house, I felt something close to peace. Not happiness. Not vindication. Just peace. The peace that comes when a man puts down the weight he was never thanked for carrying. 2 months passed. Long, quiet months. You'd think things might return to normal after a while. But when a fault line opens under a house, you don't rebuild. You wait to see if the rest will collapse. Harper stopped speaking to me. Not angrily. Not defiantly. Just stopped. Like a faucet turned off. No greetings. No eye contact. She moved through the house like a tenant avoiding her landlord. I gave her space. Not out of mercy. Out of principle. If I was just Mom's husband, then I wasn't a father. And fathers don't owe silence. Landlords do. Jenna tried to pretend the silence was temporary. She cooked more. Smiled more. Asked about my day with the stiffness of someone talking to a stranger on a bus. I answered with equal courtesy. I stopped touching her in the hallway. She stopped asking if I would. We were roommates now, at best. By the 4th week, Harper took a part-time job. I heard the phone calls. Awkward interviews, the way her voice trembled when talking about availability. She was green, inexperienced. The world had arrived faster than she expected. She got hired at a retail chain 10 miles from campus. Folded shirts for minimum wage, scowled when customers spoke too loud. She came home exhausted, muttering about rude managers, the register locking up, her feet blistered from standing too long. I didn't say anything. She complained about the train schedule, about the hours, about how no one told her how expensive being independent was. I still didn't speak. Then the car battery died again. She called Jenna from the gas station. Jenna drove out to meet her. When they came home, I was on the porch. Harper stormed past me without a word. Jenna lingered behind, looking at me like I'd watched a child drown without moving. I stared back. "She's trying," Jenna said, voice cracking. "So am I." She didn't respond. She knew what I meant. The weeks turned colder. Leaves dropped like dead skin across the driveway. I raked them alone. No one offered to help. No one ever had. Not really. One night, after another late shift, Harper came in through the garage. I was sitting in the living room, reading. She paused in the doorway, stood there, silent, waiting. I looked up. Our eyes met. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, then went upstairs. That night, I found myself lying awake, not with anger, with something colder, like the ache of scar tissue in old muscle. A part of me wondered what it might have looked like, to reach out to meet her halfway. But the bigger part remembered the look on her face that night at dinner. The words, the certainty in them. That part of me stayed quiet. I wasn't going to beg to matter. A week later it arrived. A message in my inbox. No subject line. Just one name, Harper. For a moment I thought it was a mistake. A misclick. But when I opened it I read the lines over and over. Not because they were long, but because I didn't trust them. I didn't know how much you were doing. I thought houses just stayed. I didn't realize the bills, the coverage, the safety net, it was all you. I'm sorry for making you feel like you didn't matter. There was no signature, no emojis, no punctuation beyond the periods. Just the truth, or maybe the beginning of it. I sat there staring at the screen, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat. A few years ago I would have printed this out, taped it somewhere, clung to it like evidence in a trial. See? She gets it now. But not this time. I was too far from that version of myself. After a long pause, I typed my reply. Thank you for saying that. I don't need anything from you. I just needed to be seen. I'm not your enemy, but I'm not your silent backup plan either. I hit send, closed the laptop, sat back in the dark. The next morning, no one mentioned the email. No one acted differently, but something in the house shifted. Not big, not dramatic, just enough to notice. Harper moved with less bitterness. Jenna stopped over-explaining things. No apologies, no hugs, just the early symptoms of a house waking up from delusion. A month later I moved out. Not loudly, not with screaming. I didn't pack in a rush. I didn't wait for anyone to beg me to stay. I signed the lease on a small place near South End, nothing fancy. 1 bedroom, just enough for me. Jenna didn't fight it. She asked where I was going. I told her. She nodded. That was it. Harper watched from the window when I drove off. Her face unreadable. That night I slept better than I had in years. The silence wasn't lonely. It was clean. I opened the fridge. Everything in it was mine. I sat on my couch. No one sighed if I put on a movie they didn't like. The remote stayed where I left it. The sink stayed empty if I didn't cook. No one called me for help. No one called me at all. For a while, I kept checking my inbox, expecting another message, another olive branch. But nothing came. And maybe that was okay. Because the truth was, I didn't want reconciliation. I wanted recognition. And I'd gotten it. Quietly. Without strings. I didn't move out to punish them. I moved out because I had nothing left to offer people who treated my presence like furniture. Useful, replaceable, easy to ignore until it's gone. Some days I miss the noise, the clutter, the illusion of belonging. But then I remember the silence I endured while paying every bill. The way Jenna looked down at her plate when Harper dismissed me. The way Harper said, "Your house," like it didn't belong to her. The way they weaponized my patience. My provision. I missed the idea of family. Not the reality they gave me. People say, don't give up on those you love. But what if they gave up on you first? What if they never really saw you, only what you could carry? What if the only time they acknowledged your sacrifice was after it ended? The hardest lesson I learned wasn't about betrayal. It wasn't even about gratitude. It was about value. I spent years believing that being a provider made me part of the family. But all it did was make me useful. And usefulness doesn't equal love. It equals dependence. They didn't need me. They needed what I did for them. There's a difference. When Harper sent that email, part of me wanted to believe we had turned a corner. But then I remembered, I had turned the corner months ago. I wasn't walking back. I wasn't returning to the man who carried 3 people on his shoulders while being told he wasn't part of the picture. I wasn't going to resume my role as ghost, benefactor, stranger. I was done being invisible. Now, when I sit on my porch, drink in hand, I watch the street in silence. No one slams doors. No one forgets I exist. No one asks where their tuition payment is. My paycheck is mine. My peace is mine. My name is mine. And the worst thing I could have done, the cruelest lesson I could have taught, would have been to keep paying, keep showing up, keep holding up the sky for people who never looked up to notice me. Because if you show someone they can treat you like nothing and still get everything, they will. So tell me, was I wrong to walk away? Was I heartless to leave the people I once called family? Or was I simply done carrying a weight no one ever thanked me for? Would you have endured it? Would you have stayed? Or would you, like me, finally learn the price of silence and stop paying it?